Okay, ladies and gents. So we have the city retreat this weekend. The same old. I was thinking of like we usually do sutra practices, tantra practices and Dzogchen practices, using sutra and tantra practices as aids for understanding and experiencing the natural state. And a couple of weeks ago in UK I wanted to give a little bit emphasis on shamatha practice. We did shamatha for the first 1 or 2 days, and well, sometimes open heart practitioners have a hard time having dark night periods, and that's why I wanted to speak on spring retreat and practice shamatha, especially in relation to the gut. Bringing your breathing, bringing your, should I say, like a body sensation to the gut, and from there to the body, because it makes you stable. It's the third or one of the 3 basic characteristics of the natural state, this stability. So I was thinking of doing that also, doing some simple breathing exercises in the gut this weekend. We'll also do Tibetan heart yoga and guru yoga. Like I said, same old, the old tricks with new art, like I was mentioning in Facebook today. That's Yeshe Tsogyal's picture, and that gentleman there is Padampa Sangye, or Dampa Sangye. Dampa Sangye is Padmasambhava's later reincarnation. He himself, when he was Guru Rinpoche, he prophesied that later, a couple of centuries later, Yeshe Tsogyal will be reborn as Machik Lapdron, and he himself will come as Dampa Sangye. Dampa Sangye was Machik Lapdron's guru, so that's why I brought these tankas. And then we have we have of course Guru Rinpoche's Rupa, his statue, but we have fine Russian vodka there, 3 liters. Don't worry, we won't be drinking all of it during this weekend. I asked, since Yegor was coming from Russia, I figured that now is my opportunity to get the best Russian vodka there is, for practice purposes and for medicinal purposes, not for getting hammered. So that's why they are there, and they are getting charged. So we will do these sitting practices. Tomorrow morning, the first thing we will do Rushen, and we will put the music loud for it, so that we'll get the voice also going. Not only the body shaking and body twitching, but also the voice. Really let it out through the voice. I think the first time I used music during Rushen was in February in Dublin, and the moment I put some Otis Redding in the background, like literally few beats, there was an immense relief and release of energy, and people started, in a much more freer manner, started to do Rushen. So that's why on the recent retreat, every morning at 6 o'clock, I put the volume high, and it was really good. It takes a whole different spin for Rushen when the voice is also with it. It's kind of a, how do you say, when another leg is missing and you try to, or another leg is like hurt and you try to walk with one leg. Limp, yeah. It's sort of like limps. Limps? Limping. It's like limped walk. I've meant to write or speak about Rushen more, but in Rushen there is this progression. It starts from chaotic movement and chaotic sounds, voices, but it develops. It's like little by little, perhaps month by month or year by year, our true nature comes out through it. So actually Rushen is very profound practice by itself. It's not only, just shaking off some stresses. It's very profound. And that's why it's been part of the Dzogchen tradition, Orthodox Dzogchen tradition for centuries. The way how they do it is slightly different in a way that if you know a little bit about Buddhism, the basic Buddhist view about samsara, cyclical existence, they speak of 6 realms. So these realms of, now I don't remember those 6. It's like a realm of human beings, animals, hungry ghosts, hell realms, 2 more. Gods. Yeah, sure. So these 6. So the way how they do it I've heard it done in traditional Dzogchen is that they consider these 6 classes of beings and they act them out. Sort of like if you take an acting class in a theater or something and they tell you to act a drunkard, but then you do the same for 6 different classes of beings. But the same, we do it in a bit different way. It's like we don't have those classifications. But what is very interesting, the way how we do it is that we just let it come out as it comes out. And if you've done it before, you probably have noticed that there are these kind of different emotional attitudes or kind of mind attitudes that come out. Sometimes you might kind of feel, you go into this arrogant state of mind, for example, and it just comes out somehow. You feel it physically, mentally, emotionally, you feel arrogant, or you feel, scared and paralyzed, or anything. And that's what it's for, letting it come out. So the process of Rushen, it starts from chaotic movement and sound, voice, but then it little by little it develops, and it starts to take, little by little, it starts to take forms of deities, which are aspects of your own mind in their liberated, enlightened state. You might start, speaking something mantra-like at some point. You might start speaking mantras of these deities, related to these deities. And when you get to the stage, I'm not there yet, personally. I wish I was. But at some point you get to the stage when it's all the natural state being acted out or being expressed through a physical movement and or voice, enlightened speech. But tomorrow morning we will start the chaotic screaming and shouting and all that circus. And it's like I'm kind of marketing for you here. You will get to taste yourself tomorrow morning, but the effect of that is really profound. So when you get, momentarily through a Rushen session, you get some part of your stuff released. And then after that, during that, the natural state kind of shows up. And that's of course the main point, the whole point why we are doing this. Kävisitkö Akseli laittamassa? Tuolla on ikkuna auki tuossa kopiokoneen takana. Se on siellä tuossa vasemmalla käytävällä. So Rushen, right in the morning, Saturday and Sunday. I think we will do Tibetan heart yoga after Rushen tomorrow before lunch, and then after lunch do the samatha practice. I'll talk a little. Would be helpful if you had some questions or comments that I could talk about. And then we will have another break after the second session, and then have a third session, and we will finish like the third session, maybe Guru Yoga session. That's always a safe choice. I haven't really planned this, but and then we will be done for 6 o'clock, 6 at latest. And then on Sunday, Rushen, Tibetan heart yoga, lunch break, and then we will probably combine shamatha practice and Guru Yoga for the last session. This evening we will practice Guru Yoga. Okay, so that's the program for this weekend. Maybe we will just continue sitting, and I will point out stuff as I notice something. Those of you who are watching online, I just decided to make a live stream from our city retreat starting now this evening here in Helsinki, Finland. If the connection cuts down at some point, it's because the battery runs out. So, but you can stay around until that. So there's like a constant reminder of releasing. Release, release, release. It's said over and over again. in different teachings. But as I said in our brief session half an hour ago, from the viewpoint of the natural state, the Dharmakaya aspect of Buddha nature, it doesn't matter whether the body is relaxed or tense. See if you can use that as a pointer in recognition of the natural state. Of course, it feels more natural to be relaxed. And what we are doing here, the pointer is not that if we are tense, we would just discard, push aside that tension, bypass it, and then just be in the natural state. That's not the point. This is not Neo-Advaita. But the point is that from the viewpoint of Dharmakaya, it doesn't matter. Relaxed, tense, busy in the mind, bada. No, if there are a million thoughts in your mind, or if you have very, very stubborn thoughts in your mind, from the point of view of Dharmakaya, it doesn't matter. It doesn't touch Dharmakaya. You have to get this experience, has to be as clear as possible. If it is not clear, there are many things that are helpful in having that recognition. You can just stop. Stop looking. Just stop. Stop looking for it, the natural state, in that direction or that direction. Stop trying to find it. Stop this. And the moment the seeking stops, automatically, pop, you land on the natural state. So, when that seeking or intending, when mindfulness stops, you arrive. Pititkö Olli käydä katsomassa, kun tuolla ovella? So what happens when the seeking stops for a moment and there's a landing on the natural state or recognition of it? It's just this moment of just like a sense of being free. Sort of like floating in the air until you land again and that mind starts to do its stuff again. It can be helpful to keep the body as still as possible. Because when the body is still, then it's easier to see what is going on in your mind. If you're physically very active, you have this, more stuff is happening. Your body is moving, and then there's body and mind to in the picture involved. Let's take an analogy of a beacon, a lighthouse. You all know what a lighthouse is, majakka. So usually it's like this tall tower, right? And usually it has a lamp that is directed out and there's a mirror behind it, or like a reflecting surface, so that the light, all of the light is directed to this one location. And the beacon, it turns like this. So it's sort of like it's that ray or beam of light is going like this. It doesn't move upside, but I'm just saying the way how our attention moves is like it's like a beam of light, beam of attention, right? We attend one thing, another thing, perhaps a person, another person, then there's some other object, another, and another, and another, and there can be, with this focus or attention, aiming our attention, there can be attachment. It can be just pure attention, which is mindfulness practice, or there can be attachment in it. You try to get something and take hold of it, right? That's what attachment is. You take hold of, take a grip of things. So this beam of light, beam of attention, going from one thing to another. But what if we customize that light in the beacon a little bit? We stop that moving and we take that reflecting surface behind the light, we take that off, so that it just shines freely. It's no longer going here, there, but even if there are ships, the whole sea full of Titanics, in trouble, big ships, sinking. Well, that's a bit dramatic scene, many hundreds of people died in Titanic, but you get the point. I'm talking about thoughts and emotions, stuff in the mind. So even if they are there, it doesn't really matter if they are there or not. And that's actually a very important point, that it doesn't matter if they are not there. So the natural state is not mental quietude. It's not thoughtlessness. It can be thoughtless, but it's not the same. So what we just did is we stopped seeking. Stopped trying to get something or get somewhere. And as I said that your physical body can be relaxed or tense, let's try that. So as the light of the beacon shines freely, figuratively speaking, light of the beacon, tense your muscles, tense your body. And when you tense now, right now, see if the natural state is there. Tense, tense. Is it there right now? Then you can relax. Any change in the natural state? Yes or no? Is it the same or different during the tensing? Again. Phase 2. Is it there? Does it disappear? And relax. And the same thing with thoughts. We'll do this inner chatter in 2 ways. First silently, and then aloud. So, and then start talking to yourself something. It can be simply like blah 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 blah. Doing something with your talking. Speak gibberish to yourself and see during that gibberish if the light of the beacon is there. Does it change or affect it in any way? Even if you inwardly, you talk, blah 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 blah, pala 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 pala. Blah 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 blah. And then you stop that inner chatter. Do it again silently. And during it, see from the point of view of the natural state. And then stop it. And then we'll do it aloud. Blah 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 blah. Is it there? Blah 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 blah. Again. Blah 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 blah. Okay, then you can move your body. It's a genius little experiment, isn't it? But the secret is in the recognition of the natural state. If that is blurry, it doesn't make sense. But when it's clear, you actually are in the natural state, then it's very easy to, to have that insight that the condition of the body or the mind doesn't matter. Any comments?
Kind of gets even more obvious.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always there when you remember to check it's there.
Hmm.
But often we forget
Hmm.
to be aware.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe something I could add about that light of the beacon that spreads out. When we take away that backboard, reflecting backboard, and then the light spreads out, shines to all directions without it being directed anywhere. And then, well, let's use the same analogy. If there is a storm around the lighthouse, and the storm is, there are big trees behind on the land, and the storm is, pushing down the trees, and animals are running there. There's even a fire, forest fire. Then there are ships sinking on the sea because there's huge waves. So that light of the beacon still, it lights, it shines out. It shines on the sinking ships and the big waves and the forest fire and the animals in distress trying to get to a safe place. This is very important, that the light shines on everything. And this is an important correlation to our thoughts and emotions and whatever mind stuff, because I recently I did a retreat with Dzogchen Rinpoche in UK, and I had never heard it before, but when I thought about it, of course it happens that for Dzogchen practitioners who know how to, get to the natural state properly, that for them also spiritual bypassing happens, which is that they go to the natural state, and then when stuff comes up, they stay away from it. Like he was talking about these real yogis. We are not real yogis. We are just, playing with this stuff, silly modern people living in the cities. But like he was talking about yogis, like in the Himalayas, in caves, who have somehow made the mistake of not addressing their stuff, which results in, which is spiritual bypassing, which the consequence of that is that they have a half-ass natural state. You know, it's not complete. They cannot, which is kind of a tragedy, they cannot reach Buddhahood that way. Which is kind of interesting because often it's a shamatha, just, you know, calmness of the mind that is used for spiritual bypassing. You know, people want to go into that state of calmness, thoughtlessness, and not want to address the stuff that comes up. Usually that's the case, but apparently it can also happen with going to Rigpa, knowing, and then not addressing stuff. But the light of the beacon shines on everything. There's a ship there, waves there on the sea, there's the forest fire, and there's the storm, and it is present with all of that. It's not like I just want to be here and I don't want to be with that forest fire. I can deal with one or two ships sinking down, but not. Of course not. There's no choice there. And that's a huge relief actually to be able to recognize that in one's own experience, because it changes everything. On the retreat I was talking about the difference between mindfulness training and awareness training. You know, in the I'm not talking about this culturally or socially about mindfulness movement. It's fantastic because there's, you know, it helps a lot of people. But the difference between mindfulness training method and awareness is that mindfulness is, you know, you put that beam of light, beam of attention, you set it somewhere and keep it somewhere until you start drifting in thoughts, planning stuff. Oh, I was supposed to do this concentration practice. Being as relaxed and attentive of this one object, be it the breath in the gut or the nose or a mantra or a physical object like a small stone, candle flame. You know, you're just supposed to be as relaxed and as focused at the same time as possible. But then you get drifting in thoughts, dreams, you know, you're watching a dream. Oh, this is mindfulness training. You know, you train yourself to attend one object at a time. And this has a, you know, it's very helpful because when you focus on one thing, thoughts, whatever stuff you have in your mind, stressing you, you know, making your energy scattered, it disappears into the periphery. Of course, it's helpful because it's like an epidemic in the world today that, you know, people do so many things and are so in such a hurry that, you know, it's like the energy body is a mess. So it's helpful, although it's very, very, how do you say, arduous, very challenging to keep one's attention in one thing. But, this one point, training in one-pointedness is not there with in Dzogchen, in Ati Yoga. You first learn to, when you are blah 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 in this mind, fuck, you're in this mess of mind, in that scattered mind, in this energetic mess, you learn to use any of the techniques that the teacher teaches. You learn to use any of those techniques and get to the natural state as soon as possible. And knowing which is at the basis of all sense perceptions, even all thinking. If I'm talking to another person, I'm seeing you, and at the basis of this seeing, there is the knowing of that seeing. There is the conscious recognition of this seeing. That's the knowing I'm talking about. That's the Rigpa. Rigpa means literally knowing, which is a translation from the Sanskrit vidya, which means knowledge or knowing. So, in Dzogchen teachings, this staying in that knowing through seeing, knowing through hearing, knowing through sensing, touching, tasting, smelling, thinking, feeling, eating, sleeping, exercising, whatever. This knowing is there at the basis, always. So you learn to, I wouldn't want to say bypass, but cut through the mind, cut through that and get to the natural state. And this is very, very different from mindfulness training, because in the natural state, the game is over. Even if it is for a second or two, when that seeking, be it or using that beam light consciously or subconsciously, meaning consciously in concentration practices or subconsciously, in drifting in thoughts and mind stuff, it's very, very different. With the recognition of awareness or Buddha nature, your own Buddha nature, as long as you're in it, in that knowing, that's it. In mindfulness, it doesn't happen, This concentration, attention training, you constantly have to feed it with your energy. You have to attend it. That's the difference. There has to be pressure, to attend one thing, one object. There is sort of like pressure. If you can see the tip of my finger, it becomes a little white when I start pressing down. So I'm feeding energy to it. It's the same with concentration practice, but with this, there is no pressure. because it's not concentration practice. I wonder what I was talking about. I was just going to make a brief comment on mindfulness and awareness, but I was talking about what before that? About the forest fire and about the fleeting animals and ships sinking down, and I was getting somewhere with this. Maybe I could just add that when we have techniques which are really simple, in the case of open heart practice, extremely simple, shouting pet, or just, knowing that knowing, finding that knowing, just stopping, and so on, different little techniques. That recognition lasting 1 or 2 seconds makes all the difference. I often use the image of having a storage room that is filled with stuff, more or less, which is dark. And, if the light is not on, you kind of go in that storage room and what do you call this? Groping in the dark? Not groping. Wandering in the dark? Wandering? Do you know what I mean? Mm. So seeking in the dark, trying to figure out where you are. You touch it and it's a chair. And then you go on to something else. But it's a whole different situation when you switch on the light. Even if it is for 1 or 2 seconds. Oh, there's a chair, there's 8 people sitting there, there's that was only a couple of seconds. Then the lights go out, and then chair, 8 people, it's a room this big, and then when the light goes out, you switch it again. And again you can have that. Your own natural state. And just keep doing it. So it's kind of a good analogy that instead of using a flashlight, switch on and focus in one thing for a couple of seconds, and then it switches off by itself because you can't concentrate that long. And then putting on the flashlight that shoots the beam of light to a small area. I'm kind of just making this point very clear that it's a very different type of training. Very, very different type of training to start from finish. So, if we are talking strictly about Ati Yoga, practiced by a samsaric being, which means that samsaric being is somebody who still has all kind of impulsive, energetic actions happening in the mind, gets distracted more or less every now and then, stuff arising from the karmic imprints in the subconscious mind. So Dzogchen practiced by a samsaric being, as simple as it gets. Dzogchen training for a samsaric being is that you go into that light of beacon that shines all the time, and when stuff comes up, you let it be there. Not pushing it away, not pulling it to you, not suppressing down. Attending. And if the recognition, maybe I can say this, if the recognition of the natural state is correct, automatically that the stuff that comes up, it is automatically attended. Like we have lights in the ceiling on now, automatically the light shines on everything. It doesn't pick and choose. And then if we talk about vipassana practice and samatha practice, be it in sutra style or tantric style, well, if we think of the natural state on this side, this is just like a graphic, dualistic explanation of the whole thing. So we have the natural state, is never born, never dies, nobody there, except Buddha on this side. And then on the other side, there's me. Me in million different imprints of the mind. Me as subject, me as thousands and thousands of objects, emotions, subtle energies. So, when we talk about shamatha practice, calming down, we are on this side. So if we are restless, and when we are restless, when we practice shamatha, it's sort of like we understand that we are in the middle of a mess. Then we have the motivation, which is very, very important in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. We have bodhicitta, which is to pray, wish, and make a resolve for attaining full enlightenment, Buddhahood, for the sake of all beings. This motivation already attracts this here, and it brings clarity. Gives a little bit, makes a little bit, the stiff joints, it puts a little lubrication there, and gives some confidence, faith. So shamatha practice, we are in the middle of this mess on this side, and then you start focusing on something, and then what happens is that this area of calm, you momentarily establish it in the middle of that mess. Sort of like a bubble of calmness. You create it again and again and again. Through concentrating on one thing, as I acted before, first you are in this, it's a mess, then you start focusing, and as you do that, this stuff happens, disappears in the periphery. So you clear up momentarily. And then vipassana is that when you have some calmness and you have stuff, you have some confidence, some calmness, stability, then you start looking at this stuff. What is going on here? What is this stuff? And then you have insight into the empty nature of these things. But you are still on this side. So vipassana and samatha, be it sutra or tantra, is always about this. Dzogchen is about this, going to this first. And when you know this, it gives a very different spin on samatha and vipassana. Very, very different. Okay, let's take a break of 10 minutes and then we'll continue. I didn't realize that I had been talking so long. So we'll have a break for 10 minutes and then I will start another live stream.